Hey guys, we're back and we got the shop truck in, and as you can see, it's been painted. I know I posted a quick video the other day about weighing it, and I'm sure some of you kind of saw that this thing is painted, but got a few things I want to go over with you, talk to you about why I didn't really document the whole paint process and the bodywork process, and then kind of show you what we got going on in the future. So stay tuned. So I'm finally back. Feels great to be back on here uploading, seeing you guys, and hopefully you feel the same way seeing me back on here. And hopefully, depending on when you're seeing this, you had a good Father's Day. I know I had a great weekend, so I'm ready to get back at it. But the shop truck. Now, where we left off last, I was kind of doing some of the body work on the bed, and before that, finishing up the chassis work. And from there, to be completely honest, I am just not a body guy. So what I did is I ended up sending it off to my friend, and they kind of took care of it for me. I did a little bartering and trading, and you know, I did a little bit of mechanical work for him, and he kind of did the body work. And you know, you're gonna see some pictures here. I'm gonna put a little slideshow and you know, kind of see how severe this was. The cab on this thing was just not salvageable, unfortunately. So what we ended up doing is clipping the back half of another cab and grafting it on. And some of you are going to ask why I didn't just replace the whole cab. And the reason why I felt it wasn't in my best interest to replace the whole cab is because this is a 2003 and it's a 6-speed truck. So the floor is a little bit different on the 6-speed trucks, and on the early trucks the firewall had a little bit different spots where the plugs went through and everything. So to try to find a reasonably priced, clean, early build, 6-speed, single cab in New England is just almost not possible. So we found a clean cab, grafted the back half on, and we made it work. And then as you can see, we picked my favorite color, bright orange, and I kind of always had a thing for this. One of my first Mustangs was bright orange, loved that car. And I had another short bed regular cab truck I was starting to build. Never really ended up getting to the completing that thing, and that one was orange, and I always regretted getting rid of that. So here we are, finally getting back on doing another single cab orange truck, and it looks good. So what we got left is I ended up finding, once I got it all together, that even with the shims that came with the lowering kit, the pinion angle was a little bit off. So pulled the rear end back out, and what I got now is I got the rear end. I'm going to be cutting off the leaf spring perches because I really don't want to add any more shims, because the shims are made out of aluminum, and what ends up happening is they crack, and then your leaf springs can loosen up because the shims spit out, and then you have all sorts of problems. So I ended up getting these new spring perches that are actually a little bit wider, which is going to help with axle wrap a little bit. So we're going to cut those original factory ones off, set the pinion angle to the right angle, and weld on the new ones. We're going to do a couple other tricks, or try some tricks with the leaf springs. I'll show you in a little bit. And then in a few future episodes, we also have an IPR research radiator that we're going to be installing, a nice big fat radiator that should help keep this thing cool. We got a clutch, we got sway bars, and I got a brand new set of wheels for this thing because the 22x12s just do not clear. So, you know, I really wanted to get that going. And even though in a previous episode I showed you building out those rear brakes, we never installed the rear brakes onto the rear end that belongs on the truck. So we're going to be doing that too. I'm going to split it up through a few short episodes, and maybe even upload some of it in reels. And I've been trying out the TikTok thing a little bit, so if you guys are into that, you're into it. If not, that's fine too. Everything will be posted here. So, you know, I hope you guys follow along. But let's get started. I want to get this rear end worked on, get these spring perches cut off, and start to get the new ones welded back on. All right, so let's get started cutting these perches off the rear end. So what I was talking about here is this aluminum shim is what comes with the lowering kit, and that helps turn this pinion angle down. And what I found is even with this shim in place, the pinion angle was still too far up, which made it so the drive shaft was kind of like this. And you want them as even as possible. Realistically, you kind of want both U-joints within a degree of each other. So obviously we were way off from that. I ended up measuring it and we're about 3 degrees off on this rear end. Once you get this tilted back down, the drive shaft angle comes into place and the U-joints line up all nice. So how I decided to do this is I know I need to get 3 degrees of rotation in here. So I placed the shim on and then I use this angle finder. You can get these on Amazon, Harbor Freight. I'll link them below. I don't know if you're gonna even need one, if depending on if you're gonna get into this, but these things are really helpful. Magnetic, and it just kind of uses gravity. Can't get any more simple than that. So I found where 3 degrees, which would make it so when I weld on the new perches, they will end up being at exactly 0 degrees. Now obviously the perch isn't going here, but just kind of wanted to show that for an example. I'm only going to do one at a time. That way I can verify. I can go to the other side and cut this, cut the side off, grind it clean, prep it, get it ready for weld, and then I can put the angle finder on that perch with the shim and line that up at 0 degrees. And line that up at 3 degrees. And when I know that's at 3 degrees, I can place this one here at 0 degrees. Another thing you got to do too is you got to measure where your leaf spring eyelet hole is going to be. So there's a nice flat spot right on this axle housing that we can use for reference. So we're going to measure from where the tube goes into the axle housing to the center of the centering pin hole in the original one. Mark that measurement down somewhere and then cut this perch off. All right, so we got old perch off, axle ground down, cleaned up, ready to go. Like always when welding, you want to try to get that as clean as possible. And we got this thing set on 0 based off our measurement over there on that side. Measured the 11 inches, so next thing gonna be just tack it on. Always remembering you want to spread your tacks around, that way you don't get the thing pulling in either direction. Once it's tacked on, double check. Always double check your measurements before you burn something like this in. And then just go ahead and make a nice hot pass over it. And that should be it. All right, so after you get that one welded on, you can go over and do the other side, same thing, measure before you cut, and then you can reference this one. You can now set this, make sure this one with the angle finder is a nice 0 degrees, and then you can match this one. Once you get the perch cut off, obviously the new one should be at exactly 0 degrees, and these will match. Tack it on, weld it on, and prep it for paint. So I'm waiting for a couple of parts for this rear axle, wheel seals, a couple other things so I can finish up the brakes and all that. So we're gonna move on. I got something else going on with the rear suspension I wanna show you. All right, so one of the issues you have in a truck, especially a leaf spring truck, is wheel hop. So there's a couple solutions you can do. You can either get rid of leaf springs altogether, which is not really an option here. You can do like a traction bar type of thing from the bottom out to the front of the frame, and those work. They can be a little finicky sometimes depending on how you do it. And then there is the things like Caltrax, which work great, but they're a little expensive and sometimes they can be a pain to set up. So what some guys do is they'll actually use this helper spring to their advantage, because obviously we're not going to be towing anything with this truck and not going to be really putting any weight in this bed. Realistically, I could get rid of that helper spring altogether, and I'd lose about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch of height there. That might help. But obviously then you're going to get more wheel hop. The less springs you have in the leaf, the more chance there is of wheel hop and axle wrap. So one solution some guys do is they'll clamp right around here, and they'll actually, like it's just a regular leaf spring clamp to hold the packs together, and it'll bring it up, and they use this basically as like an old school, you know, kind of like a slapper bar. But the problem with that is when you pull this up, it actually pre-twists this whole spring pack and can cause all sorts of pinion angles, which we just fixed, and it can cause other issues too. So something else that an old school racer kind of just taught me recently that I'm going to try out is using a little rubber bump stop just like this. You take that leaf spring off the bottom helper overload spring there, and you drill a hole right in the very front of this leaf spring, and then you bolt this in. And what that does is it acts as like a slapper bar. You know, you see the old race cars, the old Camaros and all that stuff with leaf springs where they had the little yellow slapper bar that would come up. It works exactly the same. Treats this spring like a slapper bar. So we're going to pull this out. I'm going to bring it to work. We're going to drill that out with a nice carbide because leaf springs can be a little bit of a pain to drill. And then we'll slap these things in. All right, so we got this drilled out, and we're going to put this little bumper through right here. And tighten her down. There you go. So let's get this thing bolted in. All right, so as you can see with that bolted on there, this comes straight, and that bump stop goes right to the bottom of the leaf spring. And right now there's a little bit of a gap between the bump stop and the leaf spring, but as you compress the suspension up, obviously that's going to change a little bit. So one way you can kind of tune these things too is by cutting a little bit of the bump stop off at a time. You might need a Sawzall or something similar to that, but sometimes, I guess if the bump stop is too tall, as the suspension compresses, this might actually mess with ride height a little bit. But I don't know, we're going to roll with it like this. We'll get the axle in, and then we'll see how it sits. All right, well, I think I'm going to wrap it up here for the night. We got the leaf springs back together. We got a little bit of progress on the rear axle there. Like I said, I'm just waiting for some extra parts for the brakes to finish that up, and once those come in, we'll work on that. So if you guys want to see more, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell button if you want to get notified when I post new videos. Otherwise, you might not see when something comes up. But very shortly, we're going to be doing a new air dam on the front. We're going to be doing the radiator, seats, clutch. We have a ton of stuff to do in a very short period of time. So we're going to get rolling on it. And, you know, I'd really like to have you guys come along on the journey with me. So make sure you check back, and hope to see you soon. And as always, thanks for watching In the Shop.